people of the Kulin. The traditional custodians of the land on which I'm presenting here in Melbourne, Australia, or NAM. I pay my respects to elders, to past, present, and emerging, and all the lands on which we do our business today. So they asked me to put up a question, and maybe the question could be, how can museums and heritage institutions contribute to human space exploration? But before we answer this question, or maybe just discuss it, we don't need really to answer it today. Our core team consists of psychologist Annahita, which you already know from the UK. And we also got industrial designer Kaori from Mexico. My co-worker, applied AI engineer and scientist Bahar, and myself with a background in industrial design and in museum and heritage studies. I'm also part of Deacon Virtual Reality Lab and looking at how can we create engaging experiences for museums and heritage. So today I'm going to talk about our preliminary stage of the research initiative aiming to develop meaningful extended reality well-being solutions for astronauts on long-duration space missions. The goal is to develop holistic solutions for measuring, monitoring, and regulating affective stress using AI, wearable sensors, and meaningful extended reality. So first, we'll take a look into some of the well-being challenges of human space exploration. Then I'm going to present our engineering design student concepts for improving crew motivation to exercise. And at the end, we will discuss our project proposal and how such solutions could also benefit people in isolated, confined, and extreme environments on Earth. So we are all familiar with NASA's 5 hazards of human spaceflight, and many of them are related to psychological and physiological issues. Health and well-being concerns, health and well-being challenges on the ISS are quite well reported and in astronaut autobiographies. You can read Cristoforetti, Kelly, Hadford, and others. They're all talking about this. On the other side, I have a question maybe for you. How many of you recall, how many of you watched For All Mankind series? Yeah, Martina. Anyone else? So many of you might recall, or I would recommend watching it. It's quite interesting because it's talking about alternative history. So those who watched can recall a quite disturbing High Bob episode, and it was about where the entertainment of astronauts living and working on the moon rely on a single TV show they had on the station. Then the story goes that the tape got damaged and the crew members start to recite the show knowing it by heart. So sadly, one of the astronauts wakes up in the middle of the night hallucinating and eventually has to leave the lunar settlement due to the severe mental health issues. Emerging research from analog missions has shown that nature-based VR experiences are restorative and help to improve the mood of people living in ICE, especially if curated to personal preferences. So there's also a growing body of evidence that visiting museums, galleries, and historic environments can have positive psychological effects, which can be further investigated for the use of human spaceflight. Also, what can be learned from the First Nations people. As pointed out by Dwayne Hanger, indigenous knowledges provide solutions to sustainable living, adapting to changing environments, and maximizing the health of the land on the continental scale. As per UNESCO, heritage is our legacy from the past, what we live with today and what we pass on to the future generations. And our culture and natural heritage are both irrespectable sources of life and inspiration. It may also be worth mentioning that a few months ago, after a few years of some sort of identity crisis, a new museum definition has also been accepted, and it's reflecting the need for more relevant contribution of museums to their users. You can read in yellow, these are all the added words that are now part of the new museum definition, and it's all about inclusivity, sustainability, diversity, and how to ethically respond to whatever we do within museums. Museologist John H. Polk defines meaningful experiences as being those that are valuable to users and that can create lasting memories, as well as having the potential to affect long-term well-being. So in this context of long-duration space missions, such experiences could activate, modulate, and enhance daily activities, including physical exercising, eating, sleeping, and meditations. So as you will see in the next slides, we divided our research pillars into 3 different sections. One is how to use this, how to create meaningful experiences and how to measure them in the context of gamified physical exercise, in the context of multisensory eating experiences, and then in the context of sleep and meditation. Speaking of extended reality technologies, what I mean here is a variety of different technologies from going on one side from real environment towards the other side when we have a total immersion. So total immersion would be virtual reality. We also got augmented reality. In that case, it means that a reality is augmented with a digital information overlay. So we can use these glasses, tablets, probably quite not so far in the future, we might even have contact lenses. So we don't want to stick with the technology that is currently existing, but having things open to see how the technology side evolves. And we're more focusing on how to do it, the principles, and who are the users and what the needs are. In this context of multisensory XR experiences, we want to mention that we're talking about 5 senses. So these are touch, taste, smell, sight, and sound. And they combine they provide different multisensory experiences. It's quite complex, but we are planning to divide this into different projects, including student projects, PhD projects, and so on. And of course, different partners as best suited. Speaking of fitness, astronauts on the ISS spend 2.5 hours per day, 6 days per week exercising, which may be motivationally quite challenging. So this is why the agencies are now investigating using gamified XR to reduce physiological or psychological fatigue. You saw a couple of interesting projects, but in the context of that, we're also looking how can we how can we introduce this also to our students? I'm currently a lecturer of industrial design at Deakin University, and I teach engineering design. So teaching and learning of human-centered design for space exploration, it's quite an interesting thing, because we want to look into how to make space industry more accessible, also to those students who are not necessarily enrolled in aerospace courses. Australian Space Agency, that's been established just a few years ago, wants to triple the size of the space sector and create up to another 20,000 jobs by 2030. So just for the context, in Australia, there is I think now 6 million people that lives in Australia. And SmartSat created this really interesting report, or you might be interested in. You can Google it, and it's publicly available in a PDF. And it's the space industry skills gap analysis around space-related skills and training provided shortages. So this report is not talking only about skill shortages from the side of the students, but also training provided shortages. So that's one of the reasoning why we're trying to incorporate space into our non-aerospace courses. So last year, we provided a design challenge, gamified exercise equipment for astronauts living and working in space in our trimester that runs between November and February. And we had 19 students. Students work in teams of 7. That was still a little bit COVID time, and we had a few students that were still offshore. Some of them actually live in different parts of Australia, but some of them were offshore in Hong Kong, India, Sri Lanka, Nigeria, Pakistan, and Thailand. And we also had industry partner and guest judge who is judging our best designs. It's like a design competition, and that was Corey from our team that I mentioned earlier. So the design challenge was integrated to the engineering design subject. So in this unit, students work on real-world problems in teams of 4, and the double diamond design framework is used to, in combination with the Ulrich and Eppinger product development process, and also in combination with Stanford and IDEO human-centered design, as well as design for X principles. Here you can see the timelines of the unit and the tasks students need to complete on the individual or team basis, from background research to concept generation, detailed design, and at the end, evaluation, not only of their design, but also of their teamwork. So let's look at a couple of student examples. Team 1 developed a reality swim simulator to fulfill the emotional needs of astronauts, a resistance pulley system for arm and leg exercises simulates swimming motions in a surrealistic underwater environment that is then visualized using a head-mounted display. So in the future, a 360-degree video of the Great Barrier Reef, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, or a similar restorative heritage-based 3D digital or digitized environment could also be used to provide a holistic body and mind experience while exercising. Team 2 designed 3 VR storyboards based on boxing, soccer, and basketball. Those were integrated into resistance training device that used an exoskeleton-inspired suit. And Team 3 developed a self-electrified exercise machine with regenerative power system. So the device provides different resistance exercise patterns using gamification in order to motivate the user completing each exercising stage in order to unlock the next one. A similar design challenge was also provided to final year project students. The team was working on two complementary concepts. One was boxing simulator and the other one was space dancer. The mock-up was later tested by team members immersed in a popular VR boxing game. So we just started with this trimester last week. We will be now in week number 2 of 11 weeks. And our next challenge is about martial arts inspired exercise system for microgravity environments. So this year we have around 70 students. They are both master's students and undergrad students working together, and also we have students online and students on campus. We work closely with a professor of professor of sport education, who is also a karate trainer, and we're really looking forward. If anyone is in Melbourne next week, we're on Tuesday, we'll actually be demonstrating karate in our class. So really looking forward to that. So what students will do, they need to propose a system solution that will consist of 2 major components. One will be a virtual reality exercise to boost motivation and reduce exercise fatigue. And the second part is a soft exoskeleton for resistance training in microgravity. Based on the students' skills, they will be able to decide which part will be the focus of the team of 4. And on the right side, you can see a couple of inspirational papers that we provided our students with to have a little bit of a direction. So before moving forward, I would just like to acknowledge our past students who contributed to the visuals that I presented in the slides that you saw before. I would also like to acknowledge the unit chair of that unit and international and external guest lecturers who assisted our student team. So as you can see, we try to incorporate a lot of different diverse lecturers from people of different backgrounds to provide some sort of a holistic view on product development. So we are proposing a multi-year project with 2 main aims. First is to create meaningful extended reality solutions to activate, modulate, and enhance daily activities on long-duration space missions. And the second, to develop an extended reality system incorporating artificial intelligence and machine learning supported wearable sensors for measuring, monitoring, and regulating affective stress. And several consultations with the potential users and experts will be conducted. Throughout the design process, the system will be tested on users in museums. That actually means that we can create some sort of a citizen science approach to museum audiences. Later in ICE environments, so speaking of analog missions, and eventually on the space station. Based on this, also on the experiences from COVID-19 lockdowns, especially I would like to acknowledge those in Melbourne, to benefit people on Earth, such solutions could be used in hospitals, asylums, retirement villages, prisons in Antarctica, submarines, oil rigs, and similar environments. And by this, the project is also aligned with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, goal number 3, which talks about good health and well-being. I would like to add a few updates before I'm going to Bahar to talk more about the AI part of this project. So we are super excited to have now 2 Kototel PhD scholarships secured with Deakin University here in Australia and Coventry University in the UK. If anyone knows anyone interested to join us, we are searching for 2 students who will work together and individually. First students, they will both start in May 2023, and it's a full-time scholarship. All the details you can find on the links here, or you can also Google that on our websites on Deakin, Coventry, and other resources. So basically, there are 2 complementary projects that are well aligned with the 2 parts that I just mentioned before. So for the first one, we will be looking at heritage-based virtual reality for well-being in space. So we are looking one student with a background in digital humanities with skills in VR. That would be preferable. They can be designers. And the second part, we are looking for a student with a background in AI. And that will be more related to measuring and monitoring affective stress using wearable sensors. So Bahar will talk a little bit more about this project, but just to give you a little bit of okay, I was too fast. So the project, I will be the main supervisor at Deakin, together with Professor Sylvester Arnab, who is the main supervisor at Coventry. He's a professor of game science. So we will be investigating how meaningful game-like heritage-based VR experiences can support the well-being. And the proposed VR content will be investigated and co-created with culturally and linguistically diverse users, including trans migrants, as a reference to the future spacefarers. So imagine people moving countries. I'm actually originally from Slovenia. I was living in Morocco. I live now in Australia. And if we think about someone moving a bit further off Earth to the Moon and Mars, it will be an interesting discussion. Also, we are very excited. We received our first little grant. It's seed funding from Deakin University. And our university gives funding to those researchers who work on the interdisciplinary research across the whole university. So Deakin Science and Society Network provided us with the Project Incubator Grant 2023. And we're really excited to start this research with our first experiments here at Deakin, where we will be measuring and monitoring the emotions of users immersed in meaningful virtual reality experiences. And I'm really excited to have Bahar, who will be leading this project. And we will, if anyone is in Melbourne, again, I'm happy to have you as participants. Bahar will talk a little bit more about this. I would just like to conclude this talk with our project researchers. So we got chief investigators from Deakin and also external chief investigators. At Deakin, we have people with backgrounds in so myself more in museum and heritage and virtual reality, Bahar AR. Then we have Naikiri. This is our National Institute, National Indigenous Knowledge Education Research Innovation Institute, pretty long name. And they just recently established Indigenous Knowledge System Lab. So we have Tyson, Gabby, and John from their institute, as well as Professor Horan and Professor Batiranya from the engineering side. On the external CI, with Annahita and Kaori, we also have Julia from RMIT University here in Melbourne, and she is a sensory scientist. So really looking forward to our progress. And if anyone is in DC, we will be presenting this project together with our Indigenous colleagues here at Deakin. We will be presenting at AIAA SciTech. So if anyone's there, let me know. We'd be happy to have coffee. And yeah, looking forward. So I'm going to give this now to Bahar to continue this talk.
Thanks, Kaja. Let me share my screen. Most of the parts are covered by Kaja. I'm just going through a PhD project that we do have. Can you see my screen? Not sure which screen you can see.
Yeah.
Correct screen. You can see my screen.
You can see first slide. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Hello everyone. I'm Bahar Nakisa. I'm lecturer of AI, working at a School of IT from Deakin University. As Kaja mentioned, we are working as a kind of like a multidisciplinary researcher working on a project entitled towards the well-being in a space, measuring and monitoring emotion of users immersing meaningful virtual reality experience. As Kaja mentioned, this is a multidisciplinary project in intersection with AI and wearable sensors, human computer interaction, indigenous knowledge, and digital heritage, as well as health and well-being and sensory and consumer science. We do have professors in our team from different disciplines, and also Nikeri Institute, as Kaja mentioned, Indigenous Institute, and also we do have a collaborator from RMIT University. The PhD project that we are we are going to recruit a student is around understanding emotional states of the user while they are on long duration mission, but it's a kind of like a big challenge for us. But we are going to go through a state of understanding emotional states and creating virtual reality content. So then we are trying to cover the psychological issue that human can face in a space mission. As Kaja mentioned, we do have a couple of different projects that are we are working as a multi-year project proposal as part of the team. Some part of the project we are working on the gamified physical exercises, and on the other side we are working on meditation and the monitoring and understanding emotional states of the users. So for this PhD project that we are working, we are borrowing the content from VROE company that Annahita is leading the company. So the VR content that we are trying to borrow, it will be updated and modified with the heritage and indigenous knowledge. So, but it has to be validated. those VR content are supposed to induce different emotional states into the user. So to capture those emotional states that are already induced into the user, we are going to use the wearable sensors. We are using different wearable sensors, medical sensors, as well as a smart sensor. The reason that we are using different type of the sensors, firstly, because some of the wearable sensors are noisy, and they may not be able to capture the physiological signals accurately. And on the other side, we are trying to find out which signal or combination of the signals are more accurate in terms of understanding and capturing emotional state of the user. So in this project, what we are going to do, the user will watch the content, and each content is inducing or stimulating a specific emotion into the user through the VR sensor. And then the participants are wearing different wearable sensors. So we are using sensor that can capture EEG or brain activity, as well as heart activity or ECG, and EDA that is capturing how much you are sweating, and body temperature. And also it can capture all your eye tracking through the VR. We are going to capture the body response as well, body posture, so how people are responding to different VR content. So then to validate the body gesture as well. All the physiological signal will be collected, and then it has to be analyzed using a AI model. So that's a part that we need a student to develop an AI model that can accurately capture emotional states of the user through the data that we are collecting. As Kaja mentioned, this project is not limited to space. It has this potential to be applied in different areas for isolated, confined, and extreme environment, and like Antarctica, submarine, prisons, and any other area. But it is not limited to that. It can be used for meditation program. The VR content that we are producing and updating and modifying, and using the AI model that we are developing, it can be used in a couple of different applications. That's a PhD project that we are recruiting a student, and I'm happy to answer any question.
So thank you so much, Bahar. That was very interesting I'm sure, for the audience to gain a deeper understanding of how effective computing is going to be used alongside meaningful technologies in a fully integrated system to support the well-being of not just astronauts going on deep space missions, but also for Earthlings who need it here. So I'm going to ask if anyone's got a question to raise their hand, and then I can sort of announce the person. That would be better rather than everyone jumping in. Let me see what's going on here. So I'm not seeing anything. Any feedback or questions, or feeling inspired? Any kind of thoughts or feedback would be useful as well about the PhD project, about some of the engineering designs, which were amazing. Let's Let's have a look.
So I just added those links if anyone is interested in sharing our call for PhD scholarships.
Just seeing if there's any questions in the chat. So, I mean, Kaja, I was thinking about, I'm not seeing any questions until I see a hand raised. Could you just talk a little bit more about combining these two together, sort of the heritage? We've had some conversations about this, but I wonder if it might be of interest if others understand what the reason is to combine AI affective computing techniques with sort of heritage-based or meaningful extended reality kind of immersive experiences, particularly in relation to deep space missions or, you know, for longer duration missions.
Thanks, Annahita. Yeah, no, definitely. It goes hand in hand. So from one side, we are creating content. We are creating content in collaboration with experts and in collaboration with users. So for that reason, we are planning to run interviews with museums and heritage people, indigenous, space medicine people, as well as astronauts, people living in, working in IC environments as users, because this is a human-centered design approach that we first investigate what is needed in terms of the content and what is available in terms of the content. I'm not sure how much you know, but in museums worldwide, there is only 2 to 4% content that is actually publicly exhibited. So imagine around 95% of content is not visible to anyone. So how can we use this content for meaningful purposes, and also not for the people on Earth, but also those who will be off Earth and those in IC environments. We're not competing with Netflix, we're not competing with Apple TV, what we mentioned, those series. We love watching fiction, but we think also that there is a huge amount of content that is available from those institutions, and how can we actually leverage that? And also, if I maybe, before I go to the second part of the question, answer, or try to kind of open the question further, how museums and heritage can contribute to human expansion to space, not only as being some sort of vehicles for STEM outreach, but we also want to look into how museum and heritage content can support those people of Earth in relation to their identity, belonging, and those type of questions.
Yeah. Thank you.
So that's one part. And if I answer the second part, why we are using, why we are measuring and monitoring. Yes, of course, you can't know what works if you don't measure it. So we want to use those aspects of AI and psychology to really understand what works and what doesn't work from the content part. It's kind of a feedback loop that goes on. And if anyone uses, I don't know, smartwatches when you go for a run, or you've got all these apps, on one side, it's you do the job, you do the run, but on the other side, you want to monitor your progress, you want to measure it, and with the technologies coming now, we can do this all together.
Thank you so much, Kaja. So two things I'd like to add. One is, let's see, because we have a community of experts, critics, people that just are interested in spaceflight. And so I wonder if we can, you know, ask a question or pose, maybe there's something we need that we can sort of request. So that's one thing that I want to sort of try to instigate a conversation around. What is it that we might need? Maybe some expertise, maybe some knowledge, maybe some advice, maybe some feedback on the project in terms of ways we can improve it. Perhaps there's some space experts here. And on the other side, I think what sort of drew me to this project initially was both Kaja and Bahar's work in terms of artificial intelligence and particularly affective computing, and how we can use meaningful technologies and programs in clever ways. And Kaja really introduced me to museums and, you know, how we can use that data. But for me, in terms of relevance for these missions, dual purpose technologies that can integrate various sort of technologies and can have benefits in multiple ways are going to be very important. So in terms of spaceflight, and you're thinking about going out to deep space potentially one day, there's going to be very little communication. They're going to be for a period of time in a space vessel. They're going to have to contend with many challenges of microgravity, radiation, solar radiation, you know, potentially cosmic radiation as well. They're going to have isolation and confinement. If anyone saw Anastasia Stepanova's talk around how that can affect you, you know, severe isolation and confinement. And they won't have, certainly as it stands, much space to carry too many things. And so we need to think of clever ways that we can integrate dual purpose technologies, maybe multiple purpose technologies in ways that, as Kaja and Bahar both alluded to in the presentation, that can support sleep, that can support meal times, that can support team cohesion, that can support multiple positive, can have multiple positive benefits. So I just wanted to leave it there. But my question would be, please, any feedback on the project, any thoughts, any ideas in terms of relevance here on Earth and off-world, we would appreciate it. And we have some hands up. So we've got Carla Perkins and then Avatar Medic. We will get to you straight away after that. And then I think we're running over and we should go back slowly.
So, excuse me. Hi. So first thought is, about the Infinite, the NASA's collaboration, the VR collaboration. So it's in San Francisco now, and I just went for my second adventure a couple of days ago, and it's extremely relevant. I mean, I'm in the field of astronomy, and it was like, just leave me out here, I'm fine. I just kept wanting to jump off out into space and float around for a while. But that kind of experience, I brought a young colleague with me, a young friend, and she said she really wanted to cry when she saw the Earth from out there. So it was a very moving and powerful experience for her. She doesn't spend so much time in outer space as a profession, and it was really, really moving for her. So the content that they have would be really useful for your project. They also now have an Oculus. You can rent it for 2 days or 5 days, and it has several videos on it of relevant material. You can take it home and show it to your friends and watch it. And so that could be really useful. The other thing is somewhat parallel to this, the International Astronomical Union has Astronomy for Development. And there's one of their projects that they're working on now is Astronomy for Mental Health. And during the pandemic, we had several conferences and meetings about the role of astronomy in mental health and its potential relevance. People who are feeling very isolated, for instance, out in the Gobi Desert in Mongolia, my friend is an astronomer there, and they just said, we don't have any problem with isolation. We go outside, look up, and we're fine. You're talking about emotions and mental health and universe, and so there's a very strong connection there.
Yeah, thank you so much for those feedback. It's really great to hear all these potential partnerships, and we would really like to invite everyone into those discussions that we will be running as part of interviews or focus groups or yarning. This is a terminology that our indigenous communities Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. It would be really interesting to do some collaboration with you. I'm not necessarily wanting to apply for the project, but all things are possible. But to collaborate and on some research would be great.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, please add me on LinkedIn, and you've got my emails. I can share this also in a chat, and yeah, let's continue discussion.
Carla, I think it's nice to see you again at the SES conference, and connect with Kaja, and I'm sure there'll be some rooms for great discussion around the project and mutual learning. So I'm just going to quickly go to Avatar Medic. You patiently had your hand up for a little while.
Thank you, Annahita. This is Dr. Jewel.
Hi, Jewel. Sorry, of course it is.
Yeah, it's okay. Don't worry about it, Annahita. So, yeah, I'm the CEO, founder of Avatar Medic. So, we're working on the convergence of IoT and a lot of these frontier technologies, of course, spatial computing, and that's using the HoloLens or Magic Leap, and being able to integrate it for telepresence. And our company actually came out of the $10 million Anna X Prize, Avatar X Prize, and they just did the finals last week here in Los Angeles. So I guess what I'm asking is, are you thinking also about incorporating spatial computing and the idea of telepresence into your study? Because that's something we're doing now and developing telesurgery and anesthesia for space exploration. That's kind of what we've been doing since 2015, including done many studies in ICE with these analog missions, looking at behavioral issues, challenges using these technologies. So that's something I would love to talk to you about. But have you thought about using telepresence, humanoid sensorium into the projects? And then the last question I ask is, currently we're also working on pioneering what we call astro psychiatry or space psychiatry, whatever you want to call it, but the whole idea of virtual embodiment of a space psychiatrist, along with psychology together, and incorporating DSM-5, maybe modifying that for long duration space mission and altering that for DSM-6. That's kind of a downstream thinking. But anyway, that was a lot for I'm throwing out, but I would love your feedback on that.
So I'll start, Kaja, and you might want to add, or Bahar, you might want to add. So at this point, there are sort of several key dimensions to the project. We're not looking at that directly, but as Kaja mentioned, the project is evolving. We're at the sort of early stages of the project, and we're just about to launch the first research aspect, the sort of field study of the project. So we would love to have discussions to sort of brainstorm. And I think the avatar side is very interesting, but it's not directly linked at the moment to what we're doing. But certainly there may be ways that we can, create something meaningful from that as a basis. But I am interested, Susan, you and I have had a few conversations, and from my understanding of, the Avatar Medic sort of interventions and programs, I think they're very interesting, very useful for particularly for space flight and space medicine. So for sure, we'd love to have conversations, and especially Susan with you, who you have such expertise in this area, and also your analog stations as well. So we would love to have conversations with you, of course.
Yeah, great to hear. Definitely, we are interested in having talks about potential collaboration and partnerships, and it's great to see you, Susan, after Paris. So the thing is that we are progressing a bit slowly because we are academics and we do a whole bunch of stuff at the same time, and but we are having discussions, especially here in Australia, with some of the museums that we might be putting together a major grant that will help us to get funding and to run all these projects that we're talking about. We're also searching for industry partners because especially our university is very industry orientated. So that's another part that we can work with. But yeah, we're progressing well, a bit slow, but well.
That's fantastic to hear. In fact, we just partnered with FIT, Florida Institute of Technology there in Florida. And so we're actually in the middle of drafting several NASA grants. And I think this would be of interest for your institutes, your universities there to maybe partner with us. So we can talk offline, Annahita and Kaja, to see if you are interested in being collaborators in this, in several of these big NASA and government funding as well. So it's great. I love what you're doing.
Well,
yeah, no, likewise. And yeah, both Australia, not both, both Australia and UK are all also signatories of Artemis Accords. So we want to establish further collaborations across the ocean between the US, UK, and Australia. And I think that we can do quite a lot in that regards.
Oh, absolutely. And I think I'm also a British citizen. I was born and brought up in England, so very much part of also the UK Space Agency and that community there. So, you know, it's all about global collaboration, right? Except we can't include China at this point, which is a shame. But, you know, that's a political thing. But I'm not in the political arena, or like, you know, spaces for all, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And we will work with that, and we'll see what the future brings. I hope that there will be more collaboration.
So I think, how long do we have? I think we're out of time. I'm in a strange time dilation situation because, you know, I've been here for many hours and it's late here. But I think we're finished. And any other questions, just do reach out to Kaja or me or Bahar, and we will gladly try to answer them. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for participating. Hope to see you at the next SES conference. And yeah, see you back in the main room. Bye-bye.
Yeah, cheers. Bye.
Thanks.